former things have come to pass, and new things I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you, I say unto you. Now I tell you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe that I am He. John 13:19. The Bible foretells many signs that will come to pass in the last days. Jesus indicated these signs will arise together as his return drew near. Though many of these prophecies won't climax until the actual tribulation period, our generation is the first to see every trend in place. As the final seconds of this age tick away, these events will come into even clearer focus. Keep in mind, as you view this presentation, that these prophecies were penned 2,000 to 3,500 years ago.
Yellowstone in northwest Wyoming, land of geysers, mountains, and lakes, is also sitting atop a super volcano. And it just took what scientists describe as a deep breath, causing miles of ground to rise dramatically. So what does this mean? Well, joining us right now is Michio Kaku. He is a physics professor at the City University of New York and the author of the upcoming book, Physics of the Future. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be on.
So the last time this happened was 640,000 years ago. We're due?
We are due.
Yellowstone National Park is one of the most studied plots of ground in the world, and it's not just for its amazing beauty, but for the beast below.
The beast below, yeah. The park sits atop one of the world's biggest active volcanoes, one capable of laying waste to much of North America, frankly.
All right, so when we talk about this, and we have pictures pictures of Mount St. Helen erupting back in 1980. Let's just show this right now. You say that an explosion with this supervolcano under Yellowstone, and there we're seeing the Mount St. Helens, would be 1,000 times bigger than this. What type of damage are we talking about here?
We're talking about immediate damage out to 100 miles from the site. That is total devastation, basically wiping out everything in sight. However, the real damage goes out to 500 miles if you include volcanic ash, poisonous gases, death of wildlife and vegetation, and that's a ring about 1,000 miles across. That's the heartline of America.
Welcome back, everybody. You have emailed about this since yesterday. We promised it yesterday. We got cut off because of that mess on Capitol Hill. But it could be the world's most powerful natural weapon of mass destruction. Yellowstone National Park, we know it's beautiful. It's also home to one of the world's few supervolcanoes. If it erupts, scientists say it would be more powerful than 60 million atom bombs. It could wipe out up to 60% of human life on Earth. Oh, it gets better, including the entire U.S. continental United States. Here's the catch, though. There have been 500 small earthquakes in Yellowstone since the 26th of December. A signal possibly of a bigger, more devastating explosion, maybe to come. Dr. Michael Rampino, volcanologist from New York University. Nice to see you, Doctor. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
What do you see in all these little small earthquakes we've been noting since the day after Christmas?
Well, it certainly made us all sit up and take notice that something's going on in Yellowstone.
3D here, which is a USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. And you can just see the most recent earthquake, a 2.3 that just struck up here in Alaska. And that's going to show on the map. There's no way for me to get that off there. But I want to show you what's happened over the last 2 weeks. All right, so in the last 2 weeks, we've had a tremendous amount of earthquakes occur around the planet, and we've seen, even in the mainstream news, much talk about it. So I want to show you the ANSS feed, which will show us everything globally 4.0 and greater. And let me just bring it back down here. And I have it set right now just to show you the 7.0s that occurred, borderline 7.0s. In the last 2 weeks. In the last 14 days, there have been 3 7.0 earthquakes and a 6.8 up near the North Pole, near Svalbard, north of Greenland. Now let me bring this back down just one notch and show you the 6.0s, and then you'll start to see greater activity down here in the Southwest Pacific, Philippines all the way east to Vanuatu. But what stands out to me are the large 7.0s, 3 in 2 weeks period of time, really less than 2 weeks. It's been about 10 days, and we've seen 3 massive earthquakes. Now, to show you a greater picture of what's going on, I'm going to bring it down one more notch, down to 5.0s. There we go. 5.0 and greater internationally. Now you can see the cluster areas. We have Southern California, where we had the swarm occur with multiple 5.0 earthquakes and hundreds of 3 and 4.0 earthquakes, which we'll look at in a second. But around each large earthquake area, cluster points. And this says to me, these are the areas we need to watch. So if you see any of these areas that are already having 5.0 swarms, that to me says we're going to be seeing larger earthquakes in these areas in the near future.
2 earthquakes have struck southwest China today, leaving dozens dead. The quakes measured at 5.6 on the Richter scale. It brought down homes and triggered landslides, prompting authorities to start massive evacuations.
2 earthquakes rocked southwestern China today, Friday, killing at least 64 people and injuring hundreds more. Both were shallow earthquakes with a depth at the epicenter of about 8.5 miles. The 2 5.6 magnitude quakes were between Yunnan and Guizhou provinces near Jiaotong City. Xinhua News and local officials estimate 515 people are injured so far, but the number is increasing as rescue teams go farther. Due to landslides and building collapse, over 450,000 people are impacted and almost 4,000 houses collapsed. The epicenter was in the town of Luozihe, about 35 miles northeast of Jiaotong.
Let me take it down one more notch, down to 4.0. All right, this is showing us everything 4.0 and greater internationally. And then it really starts to get to a point where you can almost not count all the earthquakes on the map. I mean, you could, but it would take a while. But they further accentuate the movement that's occurring and show you the cluster spots to watch.
Breaking news, like we need this tonight. Across the country, an earthquake in Canada has now triggered a tsunami warning for parts of Alaska. The earthquake was a magnitude 7.7. We are monitoring the situation and we'll bring you more as we learn it again. An earthquake up in Canada has triggered a tsunami here in
In the last year, we've now seen 3 major earthquakes in the Pacific. The most powerful, of course, this one in Japan over the weekend, but also in Chile and New Zealand. That has a lot of experts concerned that one could now be triggered on our own Pacific coast. We want to talk about that now with Dr. Michio Kaku, who's back with us again. And one of the concerns is that you would get about a 9-point earthquake up here around the Aleutian Islands.
That's right. This is not Hollywood anymore. It's actually happened. The second largest earthquake on recorded history off the coast of Alaska, and it could send a tidal wave 15 feet tall that could hit Los Angeles.
Not needed. Imminent earthquake warning just issued for several regions of the country. On edge there, on edge here, because it really didn't start with Japan. Take a look at what experts are increasingly calling the so-called ring of fire that is circling the entire Pacific Ocean. Do you remember Chile's massive earthquake about a year ago? Then we had that big one in New Zealand just last month. Then, of course, Japan. And if this clockwise trend continues, my next guest says North America looks to be on tap next. Don't laugh. Geologist Jim Birkeland is worried, and when he worries, you should worry too. Jim accurately predicted, get this, the 1989 so-called World Series earthquake 4 days before it.
It's September 7th, 2012 at 10 p.m. It appears that the San Andreas Fault and another fault, I can't think of the name, beside Salton Sea is steaming, which could be a prelude to an earthquake. There were several earthquakes in this area, hundreds if you count below 2.0. But anyway, you can see it right there beside the lake that it looks kind of like a banjo maybe right there. But here.
I'm going to go under the desk.
March 11th, 2011. A magnitude 9.0 earthquake strikes Japan.
Oh my God, the building's going to fall.
Tsunami. Yeah, we're leaving. Where do we go?
Go to the hill.
Where do we go?
Half an hour later, a massive tsunami slams the country's northeastern coast. Leaving an unprecedented catastrophe in its wake.